at 6:30 with Alistair Stewart and Nina Hussain.
Good evening. Rolf Harris was one of Britain's best-loved celebrities. Family favourite, he entertained generations with quirky music and a genuine talent for painting. Even the Queen posed for him. But we now know he was also a sexual predator, using that fame and affection to assault young girls.
Tonight, his glittering career is over. Rolf Harris is facing jail, guilty of 12 charges of indecent assault stretching over 2 decades. One of his victims was his daughter's best friend. From Southwark Crown Court, Juliet Bremner reports.
There was no escaping the shame. Rolf Harris was forced to walk slowly from court, supporting his frail wife, Alwyn. His only daughter clutched his other hand. Despite the scores of cameras, it was eerily quiet, as the shock of discovering one of the nation's favourite entertainers was now a convicted child abuser began to sink in.
Rolf Harris has habitually denied any wrongdoing, forcing his victims to recount their ordeal in public. He committed many offences in plain sight of people, as he thought his celebrity status placed him above the law.
He played on his family-friendly image as a singer and artist.
I guess these Rolfaroos really talk with funny accents, don't they?
Yet for 6 weeks in court, the sordid details of what he'd done to his own daughter's best friend were revealed. The girl was just 13. She said it had ruined her life. At his family's home in Australia, where she was staying as a guest, he assaulted the girl. Then continued the assaults back at his home in Berkshire, even as his own child slept in the same room. This letter meant Harris couldn't deny having a relationship with her, written to his victim's father in 1997, but insisting she was 18 and consented. He was 53. He writes, "I am sickened by myself. I know what I did was wrong, please forgive me. But the truth was even worse. She was only a child."
G'day. Welcome.
Even as the trial was going on, more women in Australia were coming forward to say he'd groped them. Tonya Lee was just 15 when she came to England with her dance group. He assaulted her when they were eating in a pub together.
And it happened so fast, and before I knew it, he was touching me, and then next thing I know, his hand's back out. He's giving me a hug.
Kids and water, they love it. Rivers, canals.
Such were the levels of trust that it was Rolf teaching generations of children to swim, to draw. He was even the face of a campaign warning children of the dangers of child abuse.
You're giving them advice, go and tell an adult that you trust. And in a lot of cases you'll find that adults maybe don't believe you. They say, "Oh, don't be so stupid," or "How dare you tell such lies?" But you've got to keep going to adults that you trust and keep telling them until somebody actually believes you.
And even at court, there was pretense. His daughter looked like she was arriving and leaving court with him, but was actually getting out of the car around the corner. Rolf Harris, the iconic entertainer, has finally been exposed. This is his police mugshot. He's been told he should expect a jail sentence.
You just described him as an iconic entertainer, a spectacular fall from grace then for Rolf Harris.
That's right. Remember that throughout the trial here at Southwark Crown Court, he tried to deny all these offences. He claimed he didn't know most of the women and they were simply trying to cash in on these allegations that they've made. But no more denials, and the backlash has been swift. The BAFTA, the British Academy for Film and Television, says that it will be stripping him of the honorary. Must be serious question marks about whether he'll keep that CBE awarded to him by the Queen. But I think worse than all that must surely be the words that he heard from the judge here today, who said that these offences were really so serious that he saw little option other than to send him to prison.
Juliet, thank you.
Millions of extra patients are heading to A&E because their GPs are too busy to see them. Doctors in England deal with more than 350 million appointments a year. New figures have shown just how much pressure that is putting on A&E departments, as our health editor, Catherine Jones, reports.
The doctor will call you in as soon as they're ready.
This surgery opens at 7 a.m. every day to try to deal with the relentless demand for doctors' appointments. Patients here are happy with the access they get, but admit A&E is an option they use on occasion.
It was a Monday and we couldn't get an appointment, so we ended up taking her to A&E, but it probably ended up being a bit quicker, didn't it?
Yeah.
Than coming to the doctors.
Most of the time I get appointments here.
It's only on emergencies that I have to take my kids or myself to A&E, really.
GPs in England provided 346 million surgery appointments in 2012-13. The new research estimates that almost 6 million failed attempts to get to a GP led to someone going to A&E instead. That would mean a quarter of all A&E visits were because patients couldn't see their doctor.
I would say that GPs are probably under-resourced. They're taking on more and more of the work. They're working very hard to produce high-quality care, and I think they're struggling sometimes to produce the kind of 24/7 care that increasingly the public expect.
But with 10% of GP training posts unfilled this year, doctors fear no let-up in their long hours and heavy workload.
At the moment, I have to say I feel under an awful lot of pressure, and I think most of our colleagues feel the same way. And I think if you ask me, could I see myself working at this intensity for 30 years? No.
Patients denied timely access to busy GPs are falling back on A&E, a service also under intense pressure.
What's the date of birth, please?
The NHS in England is facing challenges from all sides and finding it increasingly difficult to cope. Catherine Jones, ITV News.
Accused of plotting to bribe police officers for royal contacts. A jury last week failed to agree on whether the pair conspired to commit misconduct in public office.
And the Shadow Chancellor, Ed Balls, has unveiled a new plan to boost industry growth. In a speech at the London Business School, he pledged to create a fairer tax system to encourage long-term business investment.
Ed Miliband has described David Cameron's failure to influence the European Commission's next president. Jean-Claude Juncker was nominated, the number of Britons wanting to leave the EU has risen. Our political correspondent Carl Dinnin is at Westminster live for us now. So this is the backdrop to what faced the Prime Minister as he went to the House of Commons this afternoon.
That's right, where Ed Miliband said that his renegotiation strategy was in tatters, although, as you'll hear in a moment, does seem to have united the Conservative Party behind the Prime Minister. But even David Cameron himself admitted that on Europe, he now has a more difficult hand to play.
Of Britain's relationship with the European harder, and it certainly makes the stakes higher. There will always be huge challenges in this long campaign to reform the European Union.
His renegotiation strategy is in tatters. The Prime Minister failed over Mr. Juncker. Instead of building our alliances in Europe, he is burning them. He is a defeated Prime Minister who cannot deliver for Britain.
Now, what is really interesting is this exclusive ITV News Comres poll about whether to stay in or leave Europe. Let's look at last month's figures first. 40% said stay, 42% said go. That's within the margin of error. Now look at how the numbers have changed over this weekend. The numbers who want to stay, 36. The numbers who want to go, 43, 21 the don't knows. But that's a 7-point margin for those who say they want to leave the EU. There's a long way to go yet, but for now, on Europe, the UK is facing the door marked exit.
Carl, thank you.
Some breaking news now, and 3 bodies have been found in Israel, where police are searching for 3 teenagers thought to have been kidnapped by the Palestinian group Hamas. Our Middle East correspondent Geraint Vincent is in Israel tonight. Geraint, what more can you tell us?
5 minutes ago, Nina, the Israeli Defence Force confirmed that it had found, indeed, the bodies of those 3 boys, Naftali Frankel, Gilad Sher, both of them 16, and Eyal Yifra, 19 years old. The Israeli army deployed in numbers that haven't been seen for years onto the West Bank in the search, the 3-week search for these teenagers. The protests that followed, 5 Palestinians were killed in the clashes that arose from what they regarded as the severity of the search. The Israeli government has always been very clear on who was responsible for the kidnapping. It named Hamas as being responsible, the Palestinian militant organisation as being responsible fairly early on in the search. The question now is what retaliatory steps the Israeli government will take now it knows that the boys are dead. And more worrying still, these boys were from settler communities on the West Bank. How will those settler communities react, and will the West Bank descend into violence because of this?
Geraint Vincent, thank you.
Here, the deaths of 3 Royal Air Force crewmen could have been prevented if their Tornado jets had been fitted with a collision warning system. They died 2 years ago in a mid-air crash over north-east Scotland.
A report today criticised the Ministry of Defence for failing to adopt the system. But as Debbie Edward reports, it was just one of a number of factors that caused the crash.
It was on a routine training flight like this one taking off from Lossiemouth this afternoon that 3 RAF crewmen were killed in a collision which experts believe could have been avoided.
Just miss him desperately.
Michael lost his son Howell in the crash 2 years ago. The 36-year-old flight lieutenant was killed alongside 27-year-old flight lieutenant Adam Sanders and 36-year-old squadron leader Samuel Bailey. The Military Aviation Authority has concluded that if a collision warning system had been fitted to the Tornadoes they were flying, loss of life might have been prevented.
Just sadness, really, just sadness at a loss of a wonderful life with so much potential for the future, and not anger, no. Accidents happen, we knew it was a risky business that he was in, just sadness.
Collision warning systems have been on the Ministry of Defence requirement list for over a decade, but other upgrades have taken priority. It's only this year that they are due to be installed. The RAF insist it was a chain of events and not one single factor which led to the fatal crash 2 years ago. The 2 aircraft were also found to have been flying in poor weather conditions and to have not coordinated their flight plans both before takeoff and while they were in the air. There were a total of 17 contributory factors listed in the MAA report. In a statement, the MOD has said the RAF is already implementing the lessons learned from this tragic accident and now uses a flight planning aid to highlight potential aircraft conflicts prior to flight. Those changes are being made amid increasing calls for a fatal accident inquiry. Debbie Edward, ITV News, Lossiemouth.
Still to come, back in court, experts decide Oscar Pistorius was not mentally ill when he shot dead his girlfriend.
And Pippa Middleton on her Duchess sister and the dress she wore to the wedding. Join us again after the break.
There's so many things I would like to do I'm a bit afraid of. It's something outside our frame of reference is all this, you know, this new stuff. I can see it going, but I don't know what to do. Hold on, I've lost my adder. Hi, I can hear you. But I can't see you. No, I can't see you either. Oh! It's fantastic! Thank you so much for what you've done for us.
I told you you'd do it today.
Yeah.
Barclays Digital Eagles are not just teaching new skills like online banking, they're changing people's lives. To get more confident online, just ask your bank.
Hey, Brian, that for me?
Could be.
Confused.com is giving away £1 million.
Keep them doggies. Thanks, Brian. Safe.
And a weekly prize of £10,000.
Back.
For your chance to enter the £1 million mega draw. Buy your car, home, life or travel insurance through Confused.com.
Jackpot. The Big BT summer sale is now on. And our price has never been lower for all new customers, giving you an amazing deal on BT Infinity fibre optic broadband. It's £7.50 a month for the first 6 months and £15 a month after that. It's so good that 9 out of 10 BT Infinity customers would recommend it to friends and family. Don't miss out on the Big BT summer sale. Call today on 0800 500 289.
The quality is the important thing.
Yeah, definitely.
As well as the price. I think we'd all agree that if it wasn't for the quality, we wouldn't still be there.
What you see here is what you can have every week with Aldi. It's not a special occasion.
I said I'd give it 4 weeks and then go back to my old supermarket, but there's just no way that I'd go back now. The fact is we haven't had to compromise anywhere with quality, taste or price.
Welcome back. Oscar Pistorius was back in the dock today after a panel of experts said he was not mentally ill when he shot dead his girlfriend. They decided the athlete was able to distinguish between right and wrong and so can be found guilty of murdering Riva Steenkamp. From Pretoria, our Africa correspondent Rohit Kachru reports.
Court has not sat for 6 weeks, but the examination of Oscar Pistorius has continued. Not with public prosecutors, but with psychiatrists in private. As this trial resumed today, the question for them was whether he had a mental disorder. Was he criminally responsible for his actions?
Mr. Nell?
Yes, he was.
Mr. Pistorius did not suffer from a mental defect or mental illness at the time of the commission of the offence that would have rendered him criminally not responsible for the offences.
It was not the image of a sporting hero that we heard today, but a man with high vulnerability and little mobility.
Dr. Fairshot, when did the doctor-patient relationship started with Mr. Pistorius?
Milady, he was a small baby when I first saw him.
The surgeon who amputated his legs as a young child read his words.
I fall about once a week or once every 2 weeks. If I get out of bed, I can just fall down.
Then the judge crossed the courtroom to join both defendant and witness to be shown the impact of his prosthetic legs. But prosecutors argued that his impaired balance might undermine his entire account of the morning of the shooting.
And the most amazing part of this is firing the shots, running back from the boat. All done in the dark.
Tomorrow there'll be more evidence from an acoustics expert who argues that the blood-curdling screams of a woman that one neighbour describes hearing during the shooting might have been those of a man, and perhaps Pistorius himself. Rohit Kachru, ITV News, Pretoria.
Here, a 14-year-old girl has been killed as she walked to school in Oxfordshire. Liberty Baker was hit by a car in Witney. 2 other teenagers and a man were also injured and are being treated in hospital. The 18-year-old driver has been arrested.
Sport and Andy Murray is on the verge of the Wimbledon quarter-finals, closing in on another victory.